Hey guys, Sullivan here in Philadelphia with my back to school bangs and rush hour traffic. It's really hard to get up before commuter traffic started, but it just didn't happen. But I thought we would start, I need to kind of warm up to get back into garden tour mode. And I thought we would start by doing the tour of the outside of the fence gardens, so we can talk a little bit about the different varieties. I have the whole list of plants, and I know some people were interested in hearing about specific varieties or how I sort of chose to put things together. So I have some footage of overviews of each section where we can clearly label everything that's in the gardens. And then I'll try to talk you through my process. If you've ever watched any of my design videos, so there's absolutely nothing more awkward than talking to yourself on camera while people walk by. It's enough that people are driving by and will probably ask what I'm doing, but I don't know why. I'm just not used to being publicly visible. I guess it's because I do so much filming inside the garden by myself. But let's start, we're gonna start up here. So technically I still have this area to do, but in order for it to be on irrigation and not die, I need to do some work on this side of the property that I'm getting ready to do in September. So starting here and working our way down, I would not say that this is the warmer colors, but there are more warm colors in here. Everything out here is kind of grounded in chartreuse green. I'm sorry, the braces really make chartreuse difficult to say. And mauvey lavender purple. Starting with some of the anchor shrubs were sort of based on things that Tim and I had collected ideas of over the years. This kind of fern leaf, hinoki, I found that as a good sized shrub. The Twilight Zone grass is maybe one of my favorite grasses that I've added this year, but they were pretty small quart-sized cans, and they're a little bit messy. I think once they fill in and bulk up. The one thing out here that's been doing amazing is I got these 2-inch plug Persicaria red dragon, and they are just going bonkers. If you're just meeting me, then my husband Tim is who lives here with me. He's really anti-annual, but I don't know that I'm gonna find a shrub or grass or floral texture besides Heuchera that can do this. And I just love how the rust of these 3 colors of coleus, I'll put their names up, looks with both the solid greens that kind of happen over here and these kind of things with hints of purple and hints of chartreuse. So I wouldn't say that there was a whole lot of planning around the colors here, but I just knew that this area needed something to kind of warm this up. And then I guess the last thing I should say is you can see the dark paint on the sunroom. That's where my office is. We are getting ready to stain the fence in that color, but in a semi-transparent stain. So you'll still see some of the wood, and I think it will read as like 2 shades lighter, but I'm still swatching that. Some of the other, so the Boxwoods there's 7 Boxwoods, one's getting eaten by coleus over there. And then this is a white profusion butterfly bush that we've had for almost 4 years now. And it's been kicking around because it never had really the greatest spot. And it really resented its move, but now it's recovered. And I think even though this will be bare in the winter, I think it's the right shape and scale while we wait for the Boxwoods. And I have to say, I haven't pruned, I'm not gonna prune any of the Boxwoods this year, but they really are taking off. Everything here is on irrigation, and and that's really helping to get things established and settled in. The main grass that I used everywhere, mostly because I just kind of overbought it, was Mully Grass. And then I started looking for other native grasses, so I have just about every type of grass represented in here. This is a native prairie grass called Carex brevoire. It gets an interesting seed head. Here are some of the mullies from, these were really tiny. These came in a 50 tray, so those are already taking off. I'll have to look at the list to tell you what that one is. But yeah, this red dragon, I had planned to plant them out here so they could grow on and eventually thin them and move them around, and they really are just taking off. That is a plant, unfortunately, that dies back in the winter, but it's such a great texture. So I have lots of Heuchera in here. Tim, my husband, frequently tries to cut me off from Heuchera purchases, but now that I'm getting them, I found them in small plug form. They're a little more affordable. And honestly, there's just nothing like an evergreen full color ground cover type of texture. So I have many different colors out here, and I will put them up on the screen because I kind of have to consult the list to keep them all straight. So if I don't say the name of something, just know that I'm going to put it up on the screen. So one of the things we were dealing with is that this is about a 100-foot white pine tree. Its roots are all spread throughout this section of the garden. So some of the planting is not quite maybe an ideal position because we were dealing with tree roots. And I think that that's okay. I have a new helper, a garden assistant who's helping with weeding, which has been amazing. A native wild Baptisia that's probably a little late in the season for it to do anything, some Penstemon, some transparent Mully Grass. These were smaller plants planted out a little late, and they're really taking off. Same for this, I want to say this is Feather Falls. We'll see if I'm right when I'm doing the captioning. They're just taking off like crazy. A new color for me of a perennial Scabiosa. It's a little bit past its prime, but Silver Giga, who knows? Another Persicaria, I want to say this one's Polymorpha. We'll see again if I'm right. It's a little floppy. We've had so much rain. But then one thing that's really great to see in here is this Russian sage. I don't know the variety. I was buying it from a native plant nursery. It was in a few places around the garden, and it just never thrived because it wasn't getting quite enough sun wherever I put it. And it's just taking off. It's amazing. That is a Father Gila shrub called Mount Eerie, which I really like it as a shrub, and I also thought since Mount Eerie is the neighborhood I live in, it would be nice to feature one out here. I mean, talk about these, I'm not kidding guys, these were like 2-inch pots, these red dragon, and I want to say there's maybe 4 or 5 of them. So this is what they've done in 6 weeks. More Mully kind of popped in everywhere because Mully here stays that green grassy texture all year. It just gets its flowers in the fall. This is a newer Eupatorium, Euphoria Ruby. It's a really pretty color, and it's not one of the ones that gets super tall. So we'll see. I'll put up the list, the shrub list as we go. A lot of the shrubs are going to look pretty tiny. I had to buy the smallest sizes I could find on them in order to be able to get everything that I needed. This is a Coreopsis labeled as creme caramel, but it's very yellow. I don't do a ton of bright yellow. It is a really good texture, so And I don't have anything to replace it with, so for now it will stay. I just wanted it looked like a warmer brownish caramel color in all the photos, but it's reading super yellow to me. This is the last. I've had a trio of 9 barks kicking around because my husband used to buy 3 of everything, and this is the last one. It's definitely going to get bare, but it grows really tall, and so I kind of positioned it in the middle of the bed so that it would fill in but not go over the top of the fence. But I think the overviews for now really let you see the color story. And how the sections kind of flow together. So I probably didn't say this at the beginning, but I tended to, when I was designing the groupings, I was working generally on 3 to 4 fence sections at a time, which give or take a tree root here or there, our fence section widths are 6 foot rather than 8 foot. So 18 to 24 feet at a time, and the colors kind of shift every 18 to 24 feet with the dominant texture, which is something borrowed from Pete Udolph's style, with the dominant texture being grass. Not necessarily the same grass, which is something he does a lot in mass planting, but with that same height and texture for the different grass textures. And there you can really see, the transparent Mully grass popping up. So once those bulk out in another year or 2, it's going to be really great. And I'll put this one up. This is a dwarf variety. So the other thing that I really spent a lot of time thinking about is height. Not everything at street level is going to stay low, but I wanted to make sure that some of the tallest grasses stayed up high and back. You never really know how loud your neighborhood is until you turn on a camera and try to film. This is one of the areas that I would consider to be really successful, even though my husband gets annoyed that the grass is creeping into the sidewalk. But I love peeping through this is Blonde Ambition grandma grass. Tough to talk through these names. With an Echinacea electroshock behind it. I honestly thought those would get a little taller. And then this is a phantom hydrangea, which I found through one of the shrub nurseries I was shopping from. It really, I mean, I was surprised at how many blooms it put on being planted kind of late in the season, but this is, phantom is known for having the largest bloom sizes. And then it's a little hard to see, but the Rising Sun Redbud that's planted right up above it is really, really happy this year and putting on a ton of growth. I think, yeah, we have Carl Forrester. So lots of warmer brown-toned grasses kind of coming through here. They're just not really showing their colors. But I just really love how this area has, like, the grandma grass has really just like, this is the goal, to make everything kind of feel like this. If those Echinacea stay that size, they probably can't stay there, but we're not even sure, me and a friend who buy a lot of these perennials to try, we're not even sure if that's gonna perennialize. One of the things I did out here was repeat and carry things through the whole, partially just because when you're buying in plug form, you're buying anywhere from 21 to 7G2 of something. So you're gonna have a lot of quantity available. So I did repeating chunks and sections. So I had one type of carex up there, one type of Heuchera, I repeated it, and now we're transitioning into a golden carex. I'll have to put the name up, and then you'll see a few sections of those as we travel around the corner, and then it will shift into a different one. A different but similar golden feathery texture shrub. Sea oats. These are a weed in some places, a grass in others. We really like them, so you'll see a lot of those peppered in. More Coreopsis. Another Pennisetum. Just a swath of different grasses, Mully, Carl Forester, mountain mint. Mountain mint is a great plant to do in these kind of naturalizing styles, just because it spreads well. It's a pretty texture. Pollinators love it. So this little rosette cluster is Gum trifolium, which is like a prairie smoke wildflower. I was really excited. I found that from a native plant nursery. So I will put some of the US-based native plant nurseries that I shopped from on either on the screen or in a list below. Just bear in mind, some of them are wholesale or large quantity only. So, but it's a great place to look for varieties to then ask at your garden center about. The majority of the Mully Grass interspersed in here is the pink and the red. There's two varieties, a ruby and a sort of standard pink. Here is where we start to transition. I made this planting for this tree. I made things a little more neutral, transitional around the corner. So we have 3 compact burning bushes. This is white cloud. So it's a Mully Grass with white inflorescence. And then back here, it's nice to see them perking up. These 3 grasses that look like weird little clumps, that's a pink pampas grass that I grew from seed 4 years ago. And I potted them up and threw them kind of all together, and they've kicked around the garden in pots for the last few years, and we finally had a place. So those are expected to get fairly tall, but they're rather slow growing. But everything out here, with the addition of all the rain and just, 6 weeks to grow, most of it has really thrived. There are a few things to replace. This is a mixed flat that I got somewhere of cherry brandy rudbeckia with a few fun little weirdos that are flopped in there. Sometimes they come back, sometimes they're annual. The burning bush, this is sort of an area, again, like the coleus, for me to do an annual just to bring some color in. And then with the same repetition, so the corner I kind of treated as a transition, a fairly neutral palette of the burning bush, the pampas grass, the white cloud, Mully Grass. Still trying to figure out what texture I'm going to do here. Sorry for the shadow. I have more of that golden carex. And then down on this side, we switched to more of a silver toned. More mint. These are some native echinaceas, Echinacea pallida. I don't think I was able to find a big quantity of Echinacea purpurea, but pallida is the kind of paler purple. These tiny things are French lavenders. You can see these tracks kind of running down. All the water from up the hill pours out this area of the fence. So the lavender may not make it because it's just too much water for it. They prefer more drought tolerant, and we're struggling with things kind of washing away here. So this area, eventually, this is where, if you watch the tree video, this is where I would like to do the Ember Waves arborvitae. So I didn't plant this super thickly while I wait to see. I got some cool iris bonuses this year and didn't really have a plan for where to put them, so I started popping them out here. I'm actually going to put some bulbs out here as well this fall so that we have interest happening. Some native salvias, some like lesser known salvias. The butterfly bush is sort of being swallowed by this Penstemon. No, not Penstemon, Pennisetum. This dark leafed salvia is one of my favorite finds. It's one of the salvias you get more for the leaf texture and less for the flowers, but it already self-sowed itself a little volunteer. Sanguisorba obtusa is its name. I just heard Erin from Impatient Gardener refer to it as lilac squirrel. I think that's an accurate way to describe it. I'm trying some fescues down here. Again, might be a little too soggy down here. I'm running the irrigation on this section a little less because it's retaining so much water. 3 loropetalums, morgem, espresso, geranium macrorrhiza. Gotta say, it doesn't seem like it's doing anything. I'm hoping that's just because of when it was planted. I want to say I used the ruby mully grass and a little bit of the pink mully grass on the other side. So over here we have more of just truly the pink mully grass kind of taking off. I had just some plants left over from plantings that I was working on inside the garden. And this area I planted a little more thinly than the other side. So I started adding things in. So camelot, lavender, foxglove, Evelyn salvia, my poor Colorado blue spruce, which I don't think is dead. Tim thinks it's dead. I'm gonna keep watering it like crazy and see how it does once the weather cools. More mint, a few types of lavender salvia, and then there is the other texture that I love on this side is Ansonia hubrichtii. I started it from really tiny bare root pieces in pots, but since it's gotten into the ground, it's really taking off. That's just like a great texture that will eventually kind of fill in and do the same thing sort of as the grass textures. This is a silver carex, so I'll put its name up. I definitely know the names of these butterfly bushes. Up there you can see the beginnings of my drawing with the 9-bark, the magnolia, and the crepe myrtle, even though the crepe myrtle's a little tiny. More sanguisorba. I would love to find more sanguisorbas. I love this texture, and there's a bunch of cool ones. It's sometimes known as burnet. I just have to find a resource for them. We have Miscanthus purpurescens here, which they used a ton of in the Longwood Gardens new native gardens, and it's one of my favorite grass textures for fall, and also the foliage turns like a great kind of purpley color. So we have a lot of that on this side, and they're filling in nicely. Lots of mint, lots of salvia, foxgloves to self-sow. I'm not sure these thistles are going to return. We've had mixed results. My friend and I buy lots of similar perennials, and they don't always come back. I have a Newport Blue Boxwood for a little evergreen down here. Eventually there will be, if you've seen the drawing video, this is the telephone pole. There was supposed to be I'd like to find a blue deodar cedar to do there. So we'll have in evergreen texture kind of all down the fence, sort of staggered in between. Here's more of the messy Twilight Zone grass. Even with the messiness of it flopping around, this color is just like amazing. This like mauvey lavender, a great grass. What do we have? More salvias. So the lavender was actually meant to be like a big anchor on this bed because Tim has always wanted a lot of French lavender. And I just think it might be too soggy here for it. So we have one other place that I think I can make lavender work, and that's next to our gravel drive, because that's super dry and hot and some of the conditions that French lavender likes. So if these don't work out, salvias are doing fine here for that kind of similar texture. And I'll just have to find a place to do his French lavender. Don't judge That's like a weedy area right behind this fence, and the dread porcelain vine. This is a I want to say a silver euonymus. I'll put the name up. More grasses, probably a little too much Eupatorium colestinum, lots of Amsonia hubrichtii, some lavenders that seem to be doing well that are unfortunately planted a little too close together. The camera's getting hot and overheating, but planted a little less full on this side because this is where I started. So there's room to add things in here. And then this is an alleged non-spreading clumping bamboo that it'll get a little taller than the fence and kind of look like a bamboo textured shrub. Tim wants a third one, but I keep trying to explain to him that they really are gonna fill in. The Eupatorium was really affordable, so I think it's okay if I have to pull some out and throw it away. All right, we had to go into the shade. Both the camera and myself were overheating. Trying to do the outro literally at rush hour. Sweating. Hopefully don't have hair dye running down my face like some old fool that embarrassed himself last year. So editing Sullivan here. The audio for the outro, because I'm using a new mic, the audio was very strange. It wasn't just being muffled like we had for a few minutes there where it was tucked in my shirt. It was like making weird high-pitched noises. So rather than subject you to that, I thought that I would record my outro now while I'm finishing up the video. So there's a few things that I'm taking away from the video that I would like to share with you guys, which is one lesson that I have taken from all of these projects is buy the smallest plants you can find, because there's just like a lot more value in finding things in plug form, or plug form up to quart size is generally going to be a much better value than finding things in the gallon plus sizes, especially if you're doing a big area like I've been working on. I didn't make a lot of compromises based on what I could find. There are definitely some areas where I'm still waiting for things to be found to place them, rather than try to fill the whole area up. It does mean a little more weed management before everything's fully covered. And then the last thing that I took away from watching the tour and watching all the footage was that it's really obvious to me that where I first started, which is where the tour ended by the driveway, that's where I was really spreading plants out, was planting what I would consider, I wouldn't call it sparse because there's really nothing about my style, but spacing things out, spreading things out. I was mostly afraid of running out of stuff by the time I got to the front where we started the tour. And so as a result, as I kept moving down the sections, by the time I got to the end, I had tons of stuff left. So I was able to really start to fill things in. Now I have some stuff saved. I have some of those things that I identified during the tour that I might need to replace. But for the most part, I'm really happy with how everything turned out. But I think there's a learning curve to any time you tackle installing like a huge new garden space, which, you know, this was my first time undertaking so many plants in a short period of time. I probably have planted more than this in the other gardens, but never kind of doing it the whole time, like in one shot. And I think I mentioned in the overview video, but if you didn't see that and you're just finding this project now, it took me about 2.5 months to kind of round everything up. And that was partially because I really did not want to have to keep going back and redoing different sections as I found plants. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you'll subscribe. This was a pretty good warm up to get back into garden tour mode. If there were any plants that I missed, I know that I had a hard time identifying the Heuchera because I just didn't really pause on them very much. So I'll put a list of some of the ones that I used out there down in the description below. But I hope you'll subscribe just to see how this garden grows and see the full garden tour, which should be out next week. Like this video by giving it a thumbs up. It helps other people find this here on YouTube, where there are so many amazing gardening videos and garden tours. So thank you guys again for watching, and I'll see you soon.